Chapter 3, Part 2. The 4th of September. Himmler's office in Berlin. Schellenberg stood to attention as he handed Himmler a photograph of Walter. This is the retired police officer brought back into service to Yard Churchill, Inspector Walter Henry Thompson, Special Branch, Scotland Yard. I see. How good is he? Himmler was sprinkling fertiliser on a large houseplant. He removed his gloves and took the photograph. He's still pretty fit, sir, and apparently an excellent shot. Himmler lifted his steel-rimmed glasses to examine the photograph of Walter. What do you know about him? There's a full report here, sir. Schellenberg clicked his heels, eager to leave the office. He had heard rumours that Hitler used the ashes of Jews to feed his plants. He did not want to breathe in any of the dust his boss was sprinkling around. Oh, indulge me and give me the potted history. Himmler opened another bag of ash and the powder puffed into his face. Schellenberg tried to ignore that Himmler had a smear of dust on his cheek. Inspector Thompson was appointed as the bodyguard for Herr Churchill in 1921. His first assignment was to Egypt. They would have been killed by an angry mob if it hadn't been for Lieutenant Colonel T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. He stepped in and saved Churchill by calming the rabble. Thompson appears to have never forgiven himself for not being able to save his boss. Churchill was attacked by Irish gunmen in London the same year, but this time the bodyguard saved his life. He allowed Churchill out of his sight in America in 1932 when Churchill was run down by a taxi in Chicago. Again, Thompson doubts his competence. But he is devoted to Churchill. It is for this reason I think he's a good bodyguard. He's got something to prove. I'm sure he'd step in front of one of my snipers for the man. Himmler took off his gloves and picked up a damp cloth. He began to polish the big green leaves of his favourite aspidistra, displayed on top of a marble Roman column. Can't the inspector be persuaded to think along the lines as the Duke of Windsor? It's highly unlikely, sir, but we've got some information coming out of London again now, and we're checking it to see if he's got any skeletons in the cupboard. Schellenberg gave a stiff arm Nazi salute and waited to be dismissed. Himmler reclined in his chair, making Schellenberg wait for permission to leave. Sometimes war hangs on the drive and energy of just a few men. I think we could shorten the war for Germany if we eliminate Winston Churchill. Make me a plan. Sir, he's going to be most vulnerable when he travels, but he doesn't seem to be going anywhere much at the present. He's developed a pattern of visiting his home at Chartwell most weekends. It's a clear target from the sky. I think an air raid might prove effective. Himmler nodded and replaced his glasses. Then organise an extra trip for the Luftwaffe. I will leave the matter in your capable hands. Schellenberg waited again to be dismissed. Do you have plants, Sturmbannführer? My stormtroopers bring me this excellent fertiliser. Would you like a bag? 9th of September, Chartwell. Sawyers, the butler, rubbed his aching hip as he climbed the steep stairs to the secretary's bedroom and knocked on the door. Miss Shearburn sat up in her bed and called for him to come in. Sorry, miss, I haven't bought any breakfast. It's just Mr. Churchill is asking for you. Oh, what time is it? It's 8 a.m, miss. Thought you'd be up by now. I might have been, but I finished at 4 a.m. last night and was told I didn't need to report until midday. If you like to follow me, miss, I can show you a quick route down. I'll wait outside while you dress. She looked at her clothes, which were still strewn across the chair where she'd left them the night before. Sawyers puffed as he led her down the secret stairway and through a concealed door into the room where Churchill was waiting with Walter. She sat at the table and opened her notepad. Walter began to dictate. To the Commissioner of Police, Miss Shearburn raised an eyebrow, but continued to take down the dictation. Mr. Churchill has requested the police are no longer to be routinely informed of his movements. He is happy for his security to remain my sole responsibility. With fewer people knowing Mr. Churchill's timetable or whereabouts, the risk of a security leak to the enemy is lessened. Walter turned to Churchill. Sir, should I mention the rumour of a German paratroop attack on Chartwell? No, it's not necessary at this stage to reveal what we know or how we know it. Carry on, you two, Churchill said as he waved them away. Oh, by the way, Thompson, I've arranged for an old chum of yours to take the message to Scotland Yard. Miss Shearburn typed the memorandum with nimble, manicured fingers. Walter stood by her side. He breathed in her scent. His pulse intensified. She handed him the note to read. Walter fumbled as he signed it and passed it back. Thank you, Miss Shearburn. Walter took the envelope and went to find the courier. He smiled to himself as he handed the note to Anthony Downward, who was to act as a messenger boy. Downward's intelligence report were always addressed Mr. Churchill in strictest confidence as an intentional affront to Walter. Churchill ignored this direction and passed them on to his bodyguard unopened. The intelligence reports came from a secret location called Station X. The British Secret Service had broken the German codes. Walter received a report every time Churchill's name was mentioned. The pile on his desk every morning was overwhelming, and it wasn't fan mail, it was death threats. It was a chilly evening and autumn was on its way. Walter made his customary round of the old house, checking the doors and the windows. He looked up at the sky and was relieved to see there was no moon. Complete cloud cover hid Chartwell from the air. A sentry saluted him as he approached. Everything is in order, sir. Walter paused and his fingertips traced the shape of his gun in his holster. He was beginning to feel more in control. Now he was officially in charge. I'm going to do one more round of the buildings and then I'll lock everyone inside. No one will be in the grounds after midnight unless they're a sentry or a German agent. The latter you will do what with? Shoot on sight, sir, the sentry shouted. Thank you, Corporal. Good night. Walter walked off around the grounds and heard a distinct rustle in the shrubbery. He reached for his gun. A pulse beat hard in his neck. A small brown bird flew out of a bush. His hands were shaking as he put the gun back in his holster. Who am I kidding? A younger man should be doing this job. He stood straight and continued on his rounds, signalling each sentry as he passed. He returned to the house where he locked the door behind him. He walked up to Churchill's bedroom and sat down on a hard chair, guarding the room with his gun drawn and ready. Churchill emerged wearing a bright-coloured dressing gown and smoking a large cigar. I won't need a good copy of that until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, he called to Miss Shearburn. I think I'll take a stroll in the grounds. Walter held out his hand, barring Churchill's path. I've changed the security arrangements, sir. The sentries have been ordered to shoot on sight. Well, is there a password? Yes, but sir... Well then, you can go first and say the password. Churchill marched downstairs to a side door and unlocked it. Go on then. He laughed and pushed Walter ahead of him. I don't want to be shot, but security officers must take their chances. A plane buzzed overhead as they walked the grounds, and they gave the password to each sentry. A momentary gap in the clouds revealed the silhouette of an aircraft. Churchill withdrew a white handkerchief and wiped his forehead. I didn't recognise that one. It wasn't one of ours, sir. Walter took Churchill's arm and manoeuvred him towards the door. It was becoming foggy. Can we go inside now, sir? Walter peered at the sky. The British weather may be on our side today. And this is the end of chapter 3. Tomorrow I'll be reading chapter 4 and from 1940.